The goal of the lesson is to analyze how an author achieved purpose and perspective. Using the SOAPstone strategy, an acronym for speaker, occasion, audience, purpose, subject, tone, you will be able to use text information to respond to each part of the SOAPstone. Using the fall FAST assessment data, the target focus of the lesson is informational text. A Spanish translation dictionary will be provided to define unfamiliar terms. Providing background information. Looking at this picture, you see U.S. President Abraham Lincoln. He is about to deliver the Gettysburg Address in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, in front of an audience. In the lesson, we will examine why the United States went to war internally. And it's important for the students to know that it's a war between the South and the North. And the text is talking about Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, which is on the northeast part of the United States. In the I do part, the teacher reads the text to the students to introduce the lesson. Address, November 19, 1863. 87 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedication to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. Based on the excerpt I do text, we're going to look at the SOAPstone chart. That I just read about the Gettysburg Address, we're going to look at the SOAPstone chart. In this part of I do, we're going to look at the speaker, the occasion, the audience. So for the speaker, we would write in this text who wrote or delivered that speech, and it was U.S. President Abraham Lincoln. For the occasion, so we were talking about the speaker. Again, the speaker is U.S. President Abraham Lincoln. The occasion is that Lincoln delivered a speech to address the Civil War, and he has some message in there, and we'll discuss that message later. One of the questions he asks is, how long can the nation endure? That's important to understand the purpose and perspective. The audience is the crowd that we saw in one of the images before this document. And that's pretty much it for I do. Just gonna, I'm sorry, you ready?
Yeah.
In the systematic instruction, I am working with two students in paired group, student A and student B. So this systematic instruction, in paired groups, you will read using choral reading strategies and chunking the text. You will annotate the text by writing notes in the margin. While reading, you will highlight important text features. The two students will ask clarifying questions. The teacher will work with the paired group to analyze how Lincoln used concise language and repetition, allusions to founding ideas, discuss tone of reverence and resolve. Two questions the teacher asks is, how does Lincoln's tone contribute to his purpose? And how does his perspective as president during wartime influence what he says and how he says it? We're gonna choral read the text and chunk the information so that we'll read 3 lines at a time. While we're chunking the text, we will annotate and highlight important parts and complete part of the SOAPstone parts. All right, so the first 3 lines of the text, let's read it, choral reading. All right, so pause for a second. We're gonna read the first 3 lines together as the two students and I. 87 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now, we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether the nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. we are met on a great battlefield of that war. So students, I want you to highlight 407 years ago. And then I want you to annotate, what does that mean? So we know that a score is 20. So you would write score equals 20. And if we do the math, 20 times 4 is 80 and plus 7, so it was actually 87 years ago. Okay, when we continue reading in the text, we want to look at words from the Declaration of Independence. So go ahead and highlight that all men are created equal. So 87 years ago, that document written by Thomas Jefferson expressed these ideals by the founding fathers, that the men who fought so hard against their further freedom from England are created equal in this new nation. So you're gonna write founding fathers, and Declaration of Independence. Continue on to what we read in the first chunk. Let's look at long endure and underline or highlight long endure. And so we know that this is a war fought for several years. So we're gonna say this is the length of war. And its impact. And then finally, we're looking at great battlefield of war. So you highlight that. And we know that, based on the image earlier, that Lincoln is in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. All right, so we're going to continue to read that text. The next 3 lines. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that the nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this, but in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow these grounds. So in this part of the text, there's some key words, but the main word is consecrate. So using that Spanish translation dictionary, I want you to look up the word consecrate and tell me, what does that mean? And you'll write it on your document. And notice that it appears more than once. And so that idea that he uses word in repetition so that it emphasizes his message. Okay, so at this point, we can identify again the speaker, which we know is President Lincoln. We know that the occasion, so you can put occasion. The occasion for the speech is to talk about the impact of the Civil War. And to inform the audience. We know that the speaker is President Lincoln, and the occasion is the impacts of Civil War, as well as Lincoln wanted to inform the audience of this sacred ground that they appear to be in. So I'll continue to read. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. And I'm going to stop there. So in those lines, we want to look at nobly advanced. So it's an honor to serve the country and to give their lives for freedom and a just cause, as well as, again, he uses these choice words for honoring the lives of these soldiers. So a noble soldier, honoring the dead. Okay. We'll wrap the text up. That we here highly resolve that these dead should not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. So I want you to understand that the nation he talked about from 87 years old is being reborn based on this internal conflict. How can you come together and represent all causes and create this new ideal of what it means to be a brother, an American, and one United States? And then the government is not the government of itself, but of the people.